It's December 13th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with South Korea and the Netherlands pledge for chip alliance. The Netherlands, a leading chip-making equipment firm ASML, says it will enhance business collaboration with South Korean firms, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. The deal was announced during President Yoon Suk-yeol's visit to the Dutch firm on Tuesday. A UN General Assembly resolution calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza passes with the support of more than 150 countries. U.S. President Joe Biden says Israel is starting to lose support due to the indiscriminate bombing of Gaza. The United States has imposed sanctions on Russian shipping firms for their involvement in arms deal between Moscow and Pyongyang, as well as on more than 250 individuals and entities for aiding Russia's war efforts against Ukraine, including a South Korean national for the first time. President Yoon Suk-yeol's state visit to the Netherlands is now in full swing, with a state banquet hosted by the king on his first full day in Amsterdam. There, he shed a light on the 6 decades of relations between the two nations. Our Kim Do-yeon starts us off this morning.
At the first state banquet for a South Korean president at the Royal Palace of Amsterdam on Tuesday, President Yoon Suk-yeol gave a special shout-out to the Dutchman that brought a special moment to all Koreans in recent history.
2002년 대한민국 국민들의 가슴을 뜨겁게 달군 월드컵 4강 신화의 중심에는 네덜란드 출신의 명장 거스 히딩크 감독이 계십니다. 어디 계십니까?
This was his way of showing that South Korea and the Netherlands share a deep relationship that goes beyond semiconductor cooperation. The diplomatic relationship was established more than 60 years ago, and the two countries last year upgraded the relationship to a strategic partnership. Also, he reminded everyone that the first Westerner to become naturalized to what at the time was the Joseon dynasty was a Dutchman, Jan Jans Beltevre, or in Korean, Pagyeon. King Willem-Alexander also noted that South Korea has grown tremendously in just a couple of years, and Koreans and the Dutch are culturally connected.
The Republic of Korea is everywhere. There's K-pop on the radio, K-movies in the cinema, K-dramas on Netflix, and K-food in the supermarket.
Above all, the two leaders underscore the shared values that the two countries are based on, something that has become increasingly important with uncertainties around the world.
국제법 질서를 발전시켜야 할 의무를 헌법에 규정한 네덜란드야말로 규범 기반 국제 질서를 선도하고 있는 것입니다. 대한민국도 세계의 자유, 평화, 번영을 위해 책임과 기여를 다하는 글로벌 중추 국가로서 규범 기반 국제 질서의 강화에 힘을 쏟고 있습니다.
This comes as President Yoon started official engagements for the state visit on Tuesday at the welcoming ceremony at Dam Square in Amsterdam, which included a 21-gun salute and a greeting from Korean children. After heading inside the palace, the president and the Dutch king introduced their delegations, including Prime Minister Mark Rutte. Prime Minister Rutte, according to President Yoon himself, is one of the leaders most close to him on the global scene. And Yoon was accompanied by Rutte as he went to lay a wreath at the National Monument at the dam to commemorate the Dutch war heroes. There, President Yoon thanked the king for his hospitality, saying his state visit to South Korea in 2014, a first for a Dutch king, boosted the bilateral relationship back then, and his visit to the Netherlands is another milestone. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, the focus of President Yoon's state visit to the Netherlands is all about semiconductor cooperation between Seoul and Amsterdam. Surely enough, the first day of his official visit included a tour to a Dutch chip equipment firm where hundreds of millions of dollars in joint investments were inked. Our Oh Soo-young has more.
South Korean and Dutch chip giants will jointly invest over $700 million to foster next-generation semiconductor technology and young specialists, as President Yoon aims to solidify a semiconductor alliance with the Netherlands. On Tuesday, the South Korean leader visited the production facility of ASML, the world's biggest supplier of lithography machines crucial for making semiconductors. Accompanied by Dutch King Willem-Alexander and the heads of Samsung and SK Hynix, Lee Jae-yong and Chae Tae-won, Yoon oversaw the signing of 3 memorandums of understanding on developing cutting-edge microchips, which make up almost 20% of South Korea's exports.
ASML이 만들어낸 반도체 산업의 혁신은 인공지능, 5G, 모빌리티 등 4차 산업혁명의 강력한 동력이 되고 있습니다. 앞으로 한국 기업들과 긴밀히 협력해서 반도체 산업의 혁신과 글로벌 공급망 안정화를 위해 노력해 주시기를 기대합니다.
Samsung and ASML agreed to jointly invest some $763 million into an R&D center based in South Korea to develop ultrafine processing technology based on next-generation extreme ultraviolet or EUV lithography. Meanwhile, SK Hynix also signed a deal with ASML to co-develop hydrogen recovery technology for EUVs, recycling rather than burning hydrogen to use as process gas. This is expected to reduce power usage by around 20% and save $12.5 billion in costs annually. Another MOU was reached between the Korean and Dutch governments to establish a chip academy for graduate students beginning in February, involving the two nations' top chip-related firms and institutions, including Samsung and ASML, to offer practical training with cutting-edge equipment and facilities.
Growing talent together and sharing know-how is something that only a true semiconductor alliance can do, and we expect that exchanges between future generations in the industry will become more active.
Yoon's economic secretary noted that the deals were inked as global foundries like Samsung, TSMC and Intel scrambled to master the production of ultrafine 2nm chips, around 10 to 15 times faster than 3nm models, which were first mass-produced last year by Samsung. As their rivalry intensifies, he noted that the president toured ASML's cleanroom facility, featuring an advanced lithography machine which has never been shown publicly before. This, he said, casts optimistic prospects for South Korean firms looking to secure key materials and equipment to boost their chip-making capacity. Celebrating the budding cooperation, the South Korean leader and the Dutch king both signed a semiconductor wafer for display at the cleanroom facility.
President Yoon will further discuss strengthening bilateral chip cooperation with Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte when they meet at The Hague on Wednesday. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Amsterdam.
As he said himself, President Yoon's deep visit is all about semiconductors and fortifying a chip alliance with the Netherlands. Now, will the newly inked deals between the two governments and firms be a ladder for South Korea to lead the global chip race? Let's turn to Professor Yang Yidong this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, good morning.
Professor Yang, President Yoon checked out ASML's heavily controlled so-called clean room manufacturing facilities. That made him the first foreign leader to do that. Now, that speaks a lot about how seriously Yoon is taking the chip-related issues, right?
That's true. Well, two countries have announced that they're going to organize a chip alliance. And this room, clean room, is a very, very delicate and very sensitive facility that may impact on the yield rate of very sensitive semiconductors. And besides, ASML dominates this the extreme ultraviolet, the lithography equipment. And this is the first time for ASML to expose the clean room to any people, particularly the foreigners. So I should say that this is a great gesture, political gesture, that signifies the very intensive relationship and trust between two countries.
Right, then what does it say about the chip giant actually allowing a foreign leader to have a tour of what is a very private zone, like you said? The ASML must be seeing Seoul as a great partner in the field of chips, right?
Yes, first of all, we should remember that Samsung had invested in this company, ASML, about 11 years ago with about $300 million. Even though something like trend has decreased in investment by selling the stocks from 3% to 0.4%. But the ASML has maintained a great relationship with Korea, particularly with the Samsung. And I do believe that Samsung is one of the major triggers for the boost and growth of ASML. So that is one of the reasons why ASML has allowed our president to visit the clean room. And besides, I mean, the Korea is a very desperate situation in terms of economic growth, and also the same as for the Samsung, because Korea has observed about 8% decrease in their export this year, and Samsung Electronics may have about a 12% decrease in their overall sales revenue. So both the Korean government and Samsung Electronics, of course, same for the SK Hynix, they need to make some very tipping point to make changes in the overall economic situations, the countrywide and also the company-wide.
It's all about, in a nutshell, acquiring technology from the Dutch firm. Some experts are saying that the success of South Korea's foundry industry depends on how quickly and how much it secures extreme ultraviolet lithography from ASML. Now, what's your take on this, Professor Yang?
Well, we should remember a couple of things here. First of all, the semiconductor is the largest export sector in Korean economy. It takes about 20% of our overall $600 billion export. And besides, the semiconductor is the largest portion for Samsung Electronics, the annual revenue. They're taking about 1/3. The problem with the semiconductor industry is this year, this industry has shrunk over 10% due to decrease in the electronic equipment and also high interest rate that may suppress overall demand in economic activities. So the current government and Samsung Electronics need to make some, the tipping point to boost up their growth. And if we point to the Samsung Electronics is really struggling with the non-memory semiconductors. We should remember that the overall semiconductor market amounts to about $600 billion. And 75% of semiconductors is about the non-memory, such as CPU and GPU market. And TSMC is taking up the primary position with a market share about 54%. And Samsung Electronics is taking up as a second with a market share about 12.5%. The problem is the market share gap is getting bigger this year. Mm-hmm. And there are only two companies who can produce semiconductors with 3 nanometer technology at the moment. When within a couple of years, TSMC and Samsung Electronics announced to produce their semiconductors with 2 nanometer technologies. And this company, ASML, is the only company who can produce the extreme ultraviolet technologies, lithography, that may help produce semiconductor products with the 2 nanometer technologies. That's why Samsung Electronics is really, desperate to improve their relationship with the ASML.
Definitely, the EUV is the key of this entire trip. Then, other than obtaining the advanced technology like EUV from ASML, Professor Yang, what remaining hurdles maybe are there for South Korean firms, including SK and Samsung, to steal back and also maintain the #1 spot in the global chip race? What do you think?
Well, I explained that about 75% of the semiconductor market is related to non-memory semiconductors. Well, the current market share in the overall non-memory semiconductor is taking only 3.3%, which is 1/3 of Japan and about half of China. Well, as I explained that the foundry which is producing semiconductor sector, Samsung Electronics is taking about 12.5%. But if you expand the perspective to overall non-memory semiconductor market, our market share is just shrunk to 3.3. That means we need to expand our coverage of activities in the non-memory semiconductor market, such as fabless, which is about the designing the overall structure of semiconductors, and also design house that translate the design into manufacturing terms, etc. So there are many sectors and activities that we need to expand, not just only for Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, but we need to encourage many other the semiconductor companies to expand into other areas of non-memory semiconductor industry.
All right, Professor Yang, thank you so much for your thorough explanation this morning. You have a great day.
Thank you, too. Have a good day.
U.S. President Joe Biden says Israel is losing global support over its continuous bombing of Gaza. It's showing a new rift in relations with Tel Aviv. While the UN General Assembly on Tuesday voted overwhelmingly in favor of an immediate Gaza ceasefire. Lee Seung-ja has more.
U.S. President Joe Biden has warned Israel that it's losing global support over its indiscriminate bombing of Gaza. He also called on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to change his way of dealing with the armed conflict, showing a new rift in his relationship with the Israeli leader. Speaking to Democratic donors in Washington on Tuesday, Biden voiced criticism of Israel's hardline government, calling Netanyahu's government the most conservative government in Israel's history. The Israeli Prime Minister admitted Tuesday that there is a disagreement with Biden regarding what he referred to as the post-Hamas Gaza Strip, but expressed hope that the two sides could reach an agreement. Netanyahu is against Biden's idea to allow the Palestinian Authority to govern the Gaza Strip following the end of the armed conflict, while the U.S. leader also pushing for a two-state solution. Netanyahu argues that Israel doesn't want to see a repeat of the Oslo Accords with the Palestinians in the 1990s, a deal that included a limited right to self-determination in Gaza and the West Bank. The chief of the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, Philippe Lazzarini, visited Gaza on Tuesday to examine the humanitarian situation in the region. Describing the visit, he said it was hell on earth and called for an immediate ceasefire. Meanwhile, Reuters reported Tuesday that there are 135 hostages still being held captive by Hamas. According to the Israeli government, of the 135 held captive, 19 are presumed to have been killed. The UN General Assembly on Tuesday voted to demand an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in the armed conflict. A majority of 153 nations voted in favor of a ceasefire resolution in the General Assembly's emergency special session, while 10 voted against and 23 abstained. The non-binding resolution calls for a ceasefire for all parties to comply with international law and for humanitarian access to hostages, as well as their immediate and unconditional release. Lee Seung-ja, Arirang News.
Even at this hour, countries at COP28 are struggling to narrow their opinions on this year's summit statement, to the point where the UN Climate Change Conference has gone deep into overtime. Our Choi Soo-hyung with the latest.
The 2023 United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, which was supposed to close on Tuesday local time, has been extended as the participating countries could not reach an agreement. It's because a new draft released on Monday excluded the key phrase, phase out of fossil fuels.
It's important that we have the right language when it comes to fossil fuels. It's important that we think about how we get that balance.
The agreement fell because major oil-producing countries, including Saudi Arabia, opposed the words phase out. The Secretary-General of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries urged its 13 member countries to resist fossil fuel withdrawal. But over 100 countries, including the European Union and Australia, as well as many environmental organizations and even small island nations, some of the most vulnerable places in the world of rising temperatures and seas, blasted the draft for lacking the words phase out.
And yes, there are a couple of good things in there, but overall it is clearly insufficient and not adequate to addressing the problem we are here to address.
However, some developing countries also insisted that their countries should not be stopped by the contents of the statement.
My country is a developing country. It's landlocked. It's still, exploiting natural resources for the economic development, for livelihood improvement, for job creation and so forth.
2 years ago, the conference participants agreed to gradual reduction limited to coal, but failed to expand that to all fossil fuels last year. The summit's Director General said the countries need to come back to the objective of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius and reducing global emissions by 43%. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
The U.S. has imposed sanctions on Russian companies associated with Moscow's arms transfers from North Korea. In its new Russia sanctions package over its war in Ukraine, the U.S. State Department announcement on Tuesday included 3 companies involved in the export of North Korean military goods. The firms named were shipping firm Ibex, Asia Shipping Holdings, and Asia Shipping Company. South Korea, U.S. believe North Korea in exchange presumed to have acquired space technology that was used in its military reconnaissance satellite launch. Also on Tuesday, the Treasury Department imposed sanctions on more than 150 individuals and entities linked to Russia's Ukraine war. That includes a South Korean national surnamed Lee, an alleged key procurement agent for AK Microtech, which is a Russia-based firm transferring foreign semiconductor technology to Moscow.
Good morning, I'm Kim Si-young, and now we turn over to stories from around the world. We begin today in Pakistan, where a suicide bomber attacked a police compound in the country's northwest city of Dera Ismail Khan, killing at least 23 and injuring 32. Militant group Tehreek-e-Jihad Pakistan, affiliated to the Pakistani Taliban, claimed responsibility for Tuesday's car bomb attack, saying it was targeting officers at the police compound, which was being used as a base camp for the Pakistani army. The Pakistani army said an hours-long shootout ensued between its security forces and the militants. The statement also said a total of 27 militants were killed after overnight military operations in the area. The Daraban police station is located near Pakistan's border with Afghanistan. Now, a UN agency report released on Tuesday showed that Myanmar is once again the world's biggest opium producer, topping Afghanistan, where the ruling Taliban banned opium production. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes report said that between 2022 and 2023, Myanmar, torn apart by civil war, had an 18% increase in the land used for farming of opium to over 47,000 hectares. The opiate economy in Myanmar is estimated to be worth up to $2.5 billion in 2022, amounting for around 4% of the country's GDP. UNODC reported last month that the Taliban's ban on opium production led to a 95% drop there. Myanmar has seen turmoil and fighting since the military coup d'etat in February 2021. Now moving over to Turkey, where the president of Turkish Super League side MKE Ankaragücü, Faruk Koza, was arrested on Tuesday for punching a referee at the end of a match the day before. Koza's team drew with Rizespor on Monday evening after conceding a 97th-minute equalizer, prompting him to enter the pitch and physically assault referee Halil Umut Meler. In response, the chairman of the Turkish Football Association announced an indefinite suspension of all league matches, calling the attack a night of shame for Turkish football. The match official suffered a minor fracture after taking several more blows from others as he lay on the pitch. Now, as our last story, in Bolivia, where 12,000 baby turtles have been released into River Itenes, a tributary of the Amazon, on Monday in an effort by the local government to repopulate the river with endangered Amazon turtle. The newly hatched turtles found a new home on the border between Bolivia and Brazil. The Amazon turtle's population has been decreasing due to loss of habitat and illegal fishing, as well as the trade of turtle eggs for human consumption. This program in Bolivia has released hundreds of thousands of turtles since it began, and the local communities have developed ecotourism around the turtles.
Good morning. It's absolutely abnormal to be this warm around this time, even after Daeseol on the seasonal calendar. The warming trend continues today with warmer highs than yesterday under cloudier skies. Through Friday, we'll have temperatures that are much warmer than norms. Then an extreme cold snap awaits us this weekend, rapidly going down to -11 degrees Celsius by Sunday morning in Seoul. It's a foggy start for some of the southern provinces this morning. Afternoon highs will be 2 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday. Seoul tops out at 12, Daejeon, Daegu at 14 degrees this afternoon under cloudy skies with decent air quality nationwide. Rain is in the forecast tomorrow starting from Jeollado and Jeju, spreading nationwide by the afternoon, and that rain will continue into Friday. Then freezing air grips much of Korea, and we won't see highs above the freezing mark for a while in the capital area. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Thursday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.
한국에 오면 먹어야죠. 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니? 24시간 불이 꺼지지 않는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
The smart factory needs data from gathering to analysis. Our platform provides an intuitive monitoring system, no matter when, no matter where. We introduce our smart factory system, NextPalm. It gets you closer to perfect in smart ways straight away. See your perfect plan executed perfectly. WizCore, we build smart factory with NextPalm.
시작부터 남다른 자신감으로 그립과 하나 되는 순간 플레이는 펼쳐진다. 승리의 정점을 위한 긴 여정에서 완벽한 스윙을 만드는 나만의 스타일. 리카타.
하나, 둘, 셋.
Hey, Mr. Cupid, who's lying? Make sure you listen to what I say. I may be stupid or quite naive.
끝없이 쏟아지는 포토스팟. 휴대폰 한 대로 감당할 수 있겠니?
Arrow straight through my heart.
We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation. Making news just for you. It's December 13th here in Seoul. I'm Yoon, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Cheska Dain-hong.
Happy Wednesday, everyone.
Good morning.
Happy Wednesday.
And Nelsong. Good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. The movie 12/12 The Day is on the roll. In less than 3 weeks, the film was watched by over 7 million moviegoers, the first for a Korean film that's not a sequel or part of a series to do so since the COVID-19 pandemic. The historical thriller covers the military coup by Chun Doo-hwan that shook South Korea following the assassination of President Park Chung-hee in 1979. The film is soon to surpass the 10 million mark. And moving on to news in Japan, a fellow country struggling with a declining birth rate. The Japanese government is planning to make university tuition and related expenses free for all households with 3 or more children starting from the year 2025. Officials said there will be no income cap. They'll also cover households with students attending even junior or technical colleges. Until now, Japan has been covering the education fees of students from households with an annual income of less than $26,200. But to grapple with its demographic crisis, Japan has decided to expand its education fee subsidy program. And ending off with some local news. The country's prestigious science and tech university, KAIST, announced on Tuesday that it will try ushering a 3+4-2 program from 2025. This is a fast-track system that aims to foster more doctors in their 20s by connecting a bachelor's course to one's master's and even doctoral program. KAIST's admission office specifically pointed to how their latest integration program aims to foster famous physicists like Oppenheimer, who obtained his doctorate degree at the age of 23. Now, to elaborate on what this system is, let's do some simple math. Let's say you're a student who entered KAIST at the age of 18, and if you don't take any breaks and follow the 3+4-2 program, you'd be able to get a doctor's degree at the age of 24. Now, of course, you would have to demonstrate excellent academic performance and proceed with your bachelor's degree until at least your 3rd semester in order to be considered a fast-track candidate. But once you're eligible, you would be able to take master's or doctoral level classes. And other universities in Korea have been also trying to implement fast-track systems to allocate more high-level degrees. But KAIST's latest proposal differs in the sense that it links a bachelor's program all the way to a doctoral degree. So here at the studio, what do you guys think about this fast-track system? Who do you think it's really targeting and benefiting, and what are your hopes for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be really efficient for those who really know what they want to do and they can focus on that specifically. I think it doesn't work for everybody, let's just say that. But then I think if you already have set in stone by the time you enter university and that's exactly what you want to do for the next 7 years, then go for it. I think it's great. It could be a really good opportunity. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there are definitely pros and cons to undergoing this kind of program. So it mentioned that it wants to create more Oppenheimer type of scientists. Now, because if you've seen the movie, I don't know if having more Oppenheimer in our society is a good thing. So I'll focus on having a doctorate at 20s as the focus. But I think if you think back to when we were applying to colleges, when you're 17 and 18, most of the time you haven't had enough life experiences to really understand what you want to do for the next, even the next year, to be honest. Like even picking a major, I think, was a very difficult task for me. So having to commit to something for the next 4 years down the road to get a doctoral degree and to become a professional in that field, I think is a huge commitment.
Exactly.
So I hope that there is a criteria or screening system that makes sure that people who are applying to this kind of program is completely aware of the kind of commitment they're making, and hopefully they get more work experience and life experience before they actually get to commit to this, in my opinion.
I think that's a really good point, because even though you make a commitment that early in your age, sometimes you want to change majors.
Of course.
There's so many friends around me who were so committed into doing one thing when they started off as like a freshman in college, but they would decide to change their majors once they're a junior. So hopefully we would see some flexibility there. But this program is also thought to be beneficial to male students who have to go serve their mandatory military service here in Korea. Such students could become a professional researcher in their 3rd year into the program, then go to the military, given that they started the program in their early 20s. Once they complete their service, they would be able to complete their PhD in their mid or late 20s, which wouldn't be too late to start their career in science and tech. So we'll hopefully see these benefits reap on to any of the candidates that are eligible starting from the year 2025. But in the meantime, that was our news feed for this Wednesday. And let's switch gears to our main discussion topic of the day. This year's UN climate conference, COP28, held in Dubai, went into overtime. It was supposed to close on Tuesday local time, but participating countries couldn't reach an agreement even in the early hours of Wednesday morning on its latest draft. And that's because many nations criticized how the deal didn't call for a, quote, phase out of fossil fuels, which scientists dub the biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions that drive the globe's temperatures up. Though we're still left to see negotiators breaking a deal, participating countries have recognized the need to address pressing environmental issues. My AI voice secretary will explain in detail.
Starting back on November 30th, more than 70,000 delegates from around the world gathered to participate in the Multilateral Decision-Making Forum on Climate Change. This year's main focus was asking the world's richest countries to aim for net zero emissions as close as possible to 2040 to uphold the goal of keeping global temperature rise Celsius. Another key term mentioned was maintaining resilience in food systems. That refers to not only providing adequate food supply around the world, but also conserving and restoring land and natural ecosystems for healthier, eco-friendly agriculture. COP28 also points to how we need to adapt more sustainable approaches to production and consumption.
As we're speaking, countries are still trying to find an agreement on the language used in the draft. More than 100 countries, ranging from the U.S. to tiny island nations, are demanding that we phase out fossil fuels, but OPEC oil producer groups and its allies are showing strong resistance. Nonetheless, there were many other agendas discussed during this year's UN Climate Change Conference, and we're going to be delving deeper into food systems. So Cheska, why don't you start us off by highlighting the main things discussed in regards to food systems?
Sure. I think one of the most notable and important outcomes so far was that for the first time, food security and climate change issues became a central discussion topics at COP28. Now, the UAE Declaration on Sustainable Agriculture, Resilient Food Systems and Climate Action was announced, garnering support from 134 global leaders at the conference, which is quite amazing. And this declaration not only addresses the worldwide challenge of greenhouse gas emission, but also outline measures to protect the lives and livelihoods of the farmers that are sort of at the front lines of climate change. Now, overall, I think it is a very positive direction indeed. However, we're still undergoing this discussion and trying to figure out the right wording, and the contentions are still happening. So I do hope that there is a follow-through and strong actions actually taken outside of the conference halls and not just within.
Exactly. I do think fossil fossil fuels play an integral part. It's a main agenda, of course, for any COP events that we've seen throughout the whole years. But what else? We've been talking about food security for a while now. Would you like to elaborate on that front?
I mean, Cheska was talking about how it's important to take this outside of the conference as well. And I just want to kind of make a little point on what they're doing there at the conference and how they've prepared the food that they're having at the conference. Okay. I thought this was so interesting. As the focus of the climate change conference is to change the current food industry's food system, 2/3 of the food provided at the conference is actually vegan and plant-based menus. I was excited to hear about this. It was called the 1.5 degrees minus, I guess, menus, and they're carefully calculated to keep less than 1.5 degrees Celsius for global warming standards. They calculated the intensity of carbon and water on all the menus. They minimized the waste, used sustainable packaging, and the food options there seem quite diverse. I looked on their website. They have anything from toast to skewers to various Middle Eastern, Japanese, Vietnamese, really good. American food, they have burgers, and it's all plant-based. So I thought this was a very symbolic way to kind of say, oh, we really need to start making changes in our daily lives as well.
That's a very good point. Not only are they drafting all these different documents and talking about policies, they're actually taking action and showing with the food that they're eating how we can do that. And food systems have been found to contribute to 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions. And while we may not be able to phase food out in the same way we do with fossil fuels, officials at COP28 have mentioned how we should by changing our food system so that they can achieve net zero emissions and restore resilience. And this was a relatively innovative suggestion given out during this year's UN Climate Change Conference. Now, I want to ask you guys, though, were you guys quite aware that food systems affect the environment? And what do you think about this latest issue?
I mean, we've discussed it a couple of times in here in the studio and the episodes about food sustainability and the crisis that we're having with the climate. So absolutely, I think it's so critical and central to almost every aspect of climate and environmental issues. I mean, in terms of how our food consumption has been affecting not just the environment, but it's economic and political as well. So we know that there are lobbyists and corporates out there that probably have their best interest in heart, not for the longevity of the planet. So I think it's a multifaceted issue. So for me, I think it's something that we really, really have to tackle, because how we consume the food can definitely affect the environment in a very, very critical way. I mean, I think we kind of said it before too. If you eat, like, just replace 3 meals with vegan or vegetarian diet, you can take millions of cars out the road. I mean, that's a crazy statistic.
I know.
Like, it's so simple to do, and it can have such a huge effect. And already I think there's this, advertisement and stereotype that meat diet is the quote-unquote healthy and wealthy diet, which is not true. So according to the Intergovernmental Panel Climate Change, IPCC, emissions from livestock account for 1/5 of global emissions, which Niall will illustrate further. But I think just replacing it with vegetarian meals, changing the way that we consume food, can have a huge impact in our lives.
Exactly. Given the fact that we do it every day, might as well change up a few daily habits.
Exactly.
Now, Niall, would you like to elaborate on how food systems are affecting the environment?
I mean, we've mentioned this, as Cheska said, we talked about it on the show. I've heard about it from friends. I've read it online. And at first, I was kind of shocked to find that animals that we raise for meat create greenhouse emissions. And if you don't really think too far into it, you don't understand what it is that they're creating. But it's basically their burbs of these cows, these lovely cows, their burbs, their excretion, and everything that it takes to raise these animals. And people are trying to reduce, I guess, all of this by, like Cheska was mentioning, going vegan or reducing meat intake on a daily basis. But also there are efforts on creating things like low carbon feeds. So I guess that reduces carbon when you feed these. And excretion purification technology has also been developing a lot. So hopefully, I don't want to just say let's limit everyone's diet to just veganism and vegetarianism, but there are other ways that people are trying to renovate. There are many different ways people are trying to be creative.
It's such a complex issue because it's not only about what type of food is on our table, it's actually the process of making that food, the agriculture, the livestock, the whole procedure. Now, we asked our viewers to provide innovative ideas on their front on how to better tackle food shortages and strengthen food supplies around the world amid climate change. And here's what 3 of them had to say. Take a look at the screen to find out. Tasmia said the ingredients that we need to make a certain dish also leave waste as much as the packaging to protect it. We need to find the techniques to utilize each and every part of our ingredients so that nothing will be left to be thrown out. Giselle said there is a lot of plastic and vinyl waste from how our food is packaged. Some European nations have found environmentally friendly materials to package food or just sell products unpackaged. People take their own reusable bags to sort their produce. Now, Takata said, let's join hands and create a sustainable food system. Choose plant-based meals, refuse single-use plastics, and support eco-friendly farms. Together, we can make a difference. And as Takata said, together we can definitely make a difference, and changing our daily habits is an important step to tackling climate change and specifically to contribute to better food security and systems. Changing our daily eating habits could be a plus. That's why we're now going to talk to someone who has turned vegan and is living proof that an individual's habits can affect the environment. To find out more, stay tuned for our live interview. Let's now talk to Jin Won-seok, who's currently working as a filmmaker, but more importantly, for today's episode, he's been vegan for years now. And let's find out how his eating patterns are contributing to a better planet. Welcome, Won-seok.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Hello.
All right, Won-seok, we're going to go around and ask you a question each. I'll start with the first one. When and how did you witness how the food we eat contributes to climate change?
Well, about 12 years ago. That was a long time ago. That's when I became well, once I learned that the food we eat every day comes from, this factory farming, animal agricultural, this industrial system. I learned that animal agriculture is responsible for at least 15% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, and that's when transportation emissions combined. And that's a huge. And then, because, if you just think about it, it uses about 70% of the agricultural land to grow crops, feed for the animals. You could plant corns. People, plant corns. Instead, I think we could plant, trees. To help heal the planet. But it's really, really, really pretty bad. Yeah.
Right, it's a more easy approach than, it'd be ideal if we could go out and plant trees every day, but changing daily habits seem to be more easily done and actually bring about better changes. Now, Cheska, would you like to ask the second question?
Sure, Won-seok, I think you've pointed out all the very important reasons that a lot of people do go vegan. Could you tell us more about how going vegan can help in resurrecting the environment, literally from the situation that we're currently in at the moment, including the climate changes and the environmental issues that we're facing on a daily basis?
Well, so people know that climate change is real, and it's not the future thing. It's right now. we're experiencing it on a daily basis. So we have to do something about it. People talk about how to fight climate change, and in the automobile transportation sector, we talk about EV. EV is the future. Right. In the energy sector, people talk about renewable energy. But in the animal agricultural sector, which is a huge contributor to the global, greenhouse gas emissions, people don't talk about anything. They're just, I think maybe it's due to the fact that a lot of lobbyists for the dairy and the meat, industries they're definitely campaigning against it. But I think that we should definitely reduce the meat consumption, even maybe try to go vegan or vegetarian, or, I think that that'll really help significantly, because like I said earlier, 70% of the agricultural land is being used for these animal feeds. That's a huge, that means deforestation, biodiversity loss, water pollution. About 20% of fresh water globally is being used for animal agriculture. That's a lot.
That is a lot. Lastly, I want to ask, what are some other environmentally keen things that you do, other than going vegan, that you can do on a daily basis that maybe we can learn from?
All right, so typically in my backpack, I carry 4 things. First of all, I use tumbler, like like an conscious, of course and then you get discounts on when you order coffee, that's good. So, of course, I carry a tote bag, and I also use this water bottle. So that I don't use like these plastic water bottles, And then Tupperware in case I have leftover food when I eat out.
That's a great tip.
The food waste is a huge contributor. Yes. So I think that once you do that, and then I don't buy new clothes anymore. I buy secondhand or vintage because fashion, especially fast fashion, is really environmentally harmful. So, and then of course, use public transportation, ride bikes or walk. If you need to drive, transition to EV. So those are some of the things we can do to mitigate the climate change.
And all things that we can do on an individual level. Thank you so much, Won-Sung. It was a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right, so it's no doubt that an overlooked solution to climate change crisis is changing the food we eat or changing our daily habits. And how have food systems or agricultural systems been changing, and where would you like to see them further go following the COP28?
As I mentioned earlier, it definitely follows through with strong enforcement and accountability. I think is important. I mean, I'm truly so happy that we've gotten to a point where leaders are in agreement and there is an ongoing discussion that everybody sort of is trying to agree upon. But there needs to be something done very quickly and seriously. So I think the public sector really has to grab the rein and move the private sector and public support group to really follow through. Because the harsh truth is, and this is the ultimate truth, there is no winner at the end of the story if it continues like this. Everybody is a loser in this game. So I really think that the logo should be not save thy planet, but more like, please save thyself.
Yeah, so true.
But it's very true though,
Because it's not about a winning game, it's all about saving ourselves. What about you, Nell? Final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about agri-tech developing recently, and I mentioned that there were feeds that's actually encouraging animals to have less gas. And I really feel like in the future, as the technology develops, we also should, like once I was mentioning that we can do on a daily basis, we really start taking small steps, and together the macro changes and the micro changes come together and save ourselves.
Save ourselves.
And it's the little things that make change, and it's no longer, as officials have been saying throughout the whole UN Climate Change Conference, now is the time. There's no more time to spare. We should all be taking action, whether it's on a macro level, as you mentioned, or on an individual micro level. In the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Cheska Dainong.
Pleasure's always mine, thank you.
And Nell Song.
No problem.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.
I'm live!
저를 도와주시는 분들이
저희와 함께 해주시는 세션분들
아무리 봐도 없지. 펜션 같은데 아니라고 아무도 안 하는 거고.
좋아요.